Welcome to heavy ordnance build for Godfall, you tanky bastards. This build is for hard mode and everything that you see has been recorded on hard difficulty. I'm gonna give you two loadouts that I use. One is for bosses, I mean for big bosses, and other loadout is for mini bosses, meaning those hunts before the Dreamstone's final boss, and also for Tower of Trials. Point of this whole build is to focus on heavy weapons such as Warhammer and Greatsword. You can also add polearms here, but Greatsword and Warhammer work best with this setup. This build is not optimized, in a sense that everything that I'm wearing is not max level. This is actually the worst version of this build that you will see, because nothing is upgraded to the fullest. Let's start with skills, since skills work for both loadouts that I'm about to show you. Weapon techniques upgrade to maximum. It is important to upgrade this to the maximum because weapon techniques are truly powerful, especially with Greatsword's Northern technique and Warhammer's Southern technique because of its AoE damage. Soul Shatter also to maximum because it's the one thing that works on every enemy. Sundering Slam is decent, I usually forget to use it, but if you do remember to use it, then you're gonna do more damage to every enemy affected by it. Next to that we go for maximum critical hit chance and critical hit damage. We want to do as much damage as possible per swing, and these two play right into that. Archon Fury maximized is also quite important. Archon Fury grants us immunity to damage taken, however, more damage we take, faster Archon Fury dissipates. Polarity is not that important for this build because these are heavy weapons, meaning we will not have polarity active many times during battle. Then we go for breach. Breach is quite important. This is where heavy weapons shine. Problem is that big bosses cannot be breached, but everyone else in the game can be breached. And that is one of many reasons why I use two loadouts. I also went with all upgrades for all stats, all takedown upgrades, even though I never get to use the 5th level ones since I can never remember to use it. You can remove 5th level one if you want. Finesse 1 point definitely to improve slide, weak points all upgrades, resistance all upgrades, banner all upgrades, and then 1 point into shield throw for arcing shield throw because that is such a useful thing to have. Ailments are also nice upgrade for Tower of Trials and mini bosses, but it doesn't do anything versus big bosses, at least from what I've seen so far. Now we go to loadouts. There are a couple of Valor plates that are really good for this particular build. I usually go with Hinterclaw for Tower of Trials and mini bosses, and then I choose Aegis Horn to take less damage from big bosses. First loadout is for Tower of Trials and hunt missions. In this case we can utilize everything, meaning we can utilize bonuses such as whenever we soul shatter an enemy, then something good happens, or whenever we kill an enemy suffering from ailment, then something good happens. You can use any weapon with those bonuses. It will work in Tower of Trials and most hunt missions. Hunt missions, however, do not have as many adds, so you won't be able to utilize these bonuses as much, but then again, breach is what we want here. Heavy attacks with heavy weapons do ton of breach damage, and that's why we want breach damage bonuses on every piece of equipment if it is possible to get it. In this case my best choices were Legendary Greatsword and this epic hammer. I didn't get lucky with some better drops, but this is what worked for me very well, even without proper upgrades. Then we have Amulet. I went with Brother's Promise. Spirit Warrior Ally can be good for tanking some of the enemy's damage. It is going to pop up constantly in Tower of Trials. I also went with this one because I rolled on my secondary bonuses 26% damage increase to breached enemies. Another choice I would recommend here is gain 2% banner charge whenever you defeat an enemy. That is fantastic for Tower of Trials. Not so good for hunt missions though. Talisman that I'm using is Lion Talisman. It helps with weapon technique, and that is what we want. Weapon techniques are extremely powerful, especially with Greatsword. Northern technique of Greatsword is bananas. One of the rings that I'm using is Twice Embrace. Whenever we hit a weak point, we gain overhealth. This is extremely good. On hard mode, overhealth is very important because it will save you so many times. Then we go for Adamantite Band, another one that helps with weapon technique charge speed. Lifestone that I'm using is legendary lifestone called Cosmic Aetherstone. It increases Archon Fury charge speed, Archon Fury damage, and it is simply amazing. Banner is Messa's Banderol because of increased critical hit chance and critical hit damage. Now we go for augments for Hinterclaw. In the middle one we have Endurance. It grants additional 70% vitality to adjacent augments. That is why I have connected to the middle one two vitality based augments. One of them applies Mark of Weakness to nearby enemies whenever we breach an enemy, that is all the bloody time. Another one is plus 5% damage to breached enemies for every 20 vitality on adjacent augments. With this setup we get 45% increased damage to breached enemies. Then we go for the blue one. I'm using here to apply stasis to nearby enemies whenever we use Lifestone. It really helps in keeping some enemies at bay. Then we have Concentration legendary augment that lets us use Sacred Ground that restores health per second. Last two are might based ones. Another one that grants us some overhealth whenever we perform critical hit. And second one that increases weapon technique charge speed also whenever we perform critical hit. Now let's talk about big boss loadout. For this one I use Aegis Horn because of damage taken reduction. Differences here are in some places. First of all, for this one I'm using Dawn's Eye Amulet that increases Archon Fury charge speed. Archon Fury charge speed is really important versus boss fights because if we are in Archon Fury we cannot take damage. Aegis Horn also takes reduced damage during Archon Fury, meaning we can stay in that form for longer. Then we have Ash Meteorite. Whenever we hit a weak point, shoot projectile that deals a lot of physical damage. Very helpful to increase DPS against tanky bosses. I'm using same rings, same banner, and Lifestone can be either critical hit, focused one called Metra's Ritual Stone, or Cosmic Aetherstone, your choice. Note that in this loadout secondary bonuses do not have to be increased breach damage or anything with ailments. As I said earlier, ailments and breach damage are useless against big bosses. Augment loadout for this one should look something like this, but you feel free to change however you like it. I went with Divine Conduit to gain increased Archon Fury charge speed whenever we are hit, and against bosses we are gonna get hit, simple as that. Now for this one I went with Mirror, although I'm not really sure Mark of Weakness can be applied on big bosses. Main reason behind this epic augment is that I connected it to another green augment that increases vitality to adjacent augments by 70%, so that is the main reason why I went with it here. We connect it to Endurance, and from Endurance we go to another green one called Wolf's Fury. Whenever we parry an enemy, we gain 98 overhealth. Another Archon Fury charge speed for 10 seconds whenever we hit a weak point. Then we have Evisceration epic augment that grants us Blessing of Power whenever we perform a critical hit. Blessing of Power increases our damage dealt. Godspeed, some help with weapon technique, charge speed. Concentration again for both loadouts, it's simply too good. And then Lion's Pride, the last one that grants us 65 overhealth whenever we defeat an enemy. This is the one that shouldn't be here, but unfortunately I do not have any other options. I'm definitely missing some better choice ones, but it is what it is. I've left it here just to get increased vitality. Also it helps if big bosses summon adds, because whenever we defeat those adds we will get 65 overhealth. That is basically it. All you have to do is now play it right. This doesn't mean you are immortal or anything like that, far from it. On hard difficulty enemies can do significant amount of damage. Remember, for Tower of Trials and hunt missions use Hinterclaw setup. For big bosses use Aegis Horn setup. With Hinterclaw we can breach enemies left and right, apply ailments, do nasty things all over the place. However, versus big bosses these things don't matter at all, and we need to focus our efforts on just damaging the bloody thing and also surviving in the meantime. That is why Aegis Horn in my opinion is one of the better options for big bosses. When it comes to gameplay for this particular build, I don't have many things to say. One thing you should always do is use heavy attacks with Warhammer, and with Greatsword use couple of light attacks and then end with heavy attack combo. Northern technique for Greatswords is absolutely amazing. It is some kind of a windmill attack, basically you spin around and do massive damage to everything around you. For Warhammer I prefer Southern technique because it does also AoE damage, although it is not as powerful as a Greatsword one. Don't forget to also switch when polarity is active, even though it won't be as active as with some other setups, simply because these weapons are way too heavy and attack way too slow, but they also hurt a lot. Anyway, thank you for watching, I hope you liked this build and stay tuned for more content.